At my graduation party, my dad took the stage, grabbed the mic, and roared, "She wouldn't even have a diploma without me paying for her sorry life." I sat frozen as he went on. "I deserve a cut of her first paycheck, her car, and her apartment." When I quietly said, "Dad, that's enough," he slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "You owe me your future." I left in tears, but that was only the beginning of his demands. I swear the room went silent the second my dad grabbed the mic. One second I was smiling with my friends from UT Austin, holding a slice of cake, and the next his voice exploded through the speakers like a gunshot. "She wouldn't even have a diploma without me paying for her sorry life." People actually laughed at first, thinking he was joking. I did too. My mom's eyes darted across the backyard like she was searching for an exit. I felt this sick heat crawl up my neck as my dad kept going, pacing across the little wooden deck like he was delivering a sermon. "I deserve a cut of her first paycheck, her car, and her apartment." There was this weird mix of cheering and uncomfortable shifting. My cousin whispered, "Damn, dude," under his breath. I wish the earth would just open and swallow me whole. I tried to play it off, giving a nervous smile, but my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the plastic fork I was holding. "Dad, that's enough," I said, barely above a whisper. He slammed his fist on the folding table so hard the soda cans jumped. "You owe me your future," someone gasped. My mom closed her eyes like she'd just realized something she'd hoped wasn't true. And me, I froze. I felt like I was 8 years old again, watching him storm around the kitchen because the bills were late or because I didn't fold the towels the right way. That same cold, heavy fear just settled inside my chest. People slowly backed away, pretending to check their phones or refill their cups. My dad kept ranting, his face bright red, spit flying, talking about respect and debt and sacrifice, like my graduation was some kind of repayment ceremony. I didn't even hear the words anymore. I just stared at the grass, trying not to fall apart. When he finally shoved the mic back into its stand and stormed off toward the house, I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look at anyone. I just got in my car, closed the door, and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. But here's the thing, I thought it was over. I really did. I thought he had just humiliated me in front of everyone I cared about, and that it would take weeks, maybe months, to repair whatever was left between us. I had no clue that the mic incident was just the warm-up. Because the next morning, at 7:12 a.m. on the dot, he showed up at my apartment in Round Rock with a folder under his arm and this smug smile that made my stomach twist. "I've been thinking," he said, pushing past me like he owned the place. "I'm ready to talk numbers." "Numbers?" I asked, still half asleep, still praying I was dreaming. He dropped the folder on my kitchen table. Papers spilled out, a spreadsheet. A handwritten list, something that looked like a bill. "For what I'm owed," he said. Calm, too calm, like we were discussing a phone plan instead of MY life. I just stood there in my pajamas, staring at the stack of papers like they might catch fire if I blinked too hard. The smell of my leftover takeout and the hum of the fridge felt unreal. My own kitchen suddenly felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. "You can start paying this back immediately," he said, tapping the papers. "After all, a future like yours doesn't come free." And then he said the sentence that changed everything, the thing that made my fear turn into something else entirely. "Don't make me collect it the hard way." I didn't know what the hard way meant. When I was a kid growing up in Cedar Park, everyone thought my dad was this hardworking, devoted single father. He coached my YMCA soccer team, showed up at school events, cracked jokes with other parents. People loved him. They'd always say stuff like, "Your dad is such a good guy," or "You're lucky, not everyone has a father who cares this much." I used to believe it too, but the truth is he didn't care. He controlled. Every good thing he did came with a string, and the string always tightened later. If he bought me a backpack, he'd remind me every week how I owed him gratitude. If he paid for a dentist visit, he'd hold it over my head whenever I didn't agree with him. Nothing was ever a gift. Everything was a future debt. My mom left him when I was 10. She didn't run away, nothing dramatic like that. She just couldn't handle the constant tension. She said living with him felt like being monitored by someone who thinks love is a ledger. She tried to take me with her, but he told me she was abandoning me. And I was too young to know better, so I stayed. Through middle school and high school, he became my entire world. He controlled my curfew, my friends, my grades, my clothes, even the way I talked. But because he never raised a hand to me, I convinced myself it wasn't abuse. I told myself all dads were intense, all dads yelled, all dads made their kids feel guilty for breathing. When I got into UT Austin, everything snapped. He didn't congratulate me, he didn't hug me. He didn't say he was proud. He asked, "So what do I get out of this?" He said college would repay him in the long run. But he didn't actually pay for anything scholarships, grants, and my part-time job did. His contribution was letting me borrow his old Ford Escape for the commute from Round Rock. And even that came with weekly check-ins and lectures about responsibility. When I moved into my apartment junior year, I felt like I could finally breathe. My mom helped me with the security deposit, and his jealousy was obvious. He called it care, but it was possessiveness. I knew it, my mom knew it, everyone who had seen us together long enough knew it, but I still invited him to my graduation party. Because as twisted as it sounds, part of me wanted him to see me succeed. Part of me wanted him to look at me and finally feel proud instead of owed. Instead, he turned my milestone into a spectacle. A humiliation. And the crazy thing, people weren't even surprised. After the party, 2 of my aunts texted me apologizing for him. My cousin straight up said, "He's been like that forever. None of us knew how to tell you." That hurt more than anything else, realizing everyone saw the truth about him except me. So when he showed up at my apartment after the party, carrying that folder like an attorney serving a lawsuit, something inside me cracked. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was finally seeing him without the fog of childhood loyalty. I just knew one thing, this wasn't about money. It never had been. It was about control, about ownership. I didn't know yet what he had in that folder, what he had been building for years. But when he said, "Don't make me collect it the hard way," something cold settled in my stomach. Because deep down, I already knew, my dad wasn't bluffing. He sat at my kitchen table like he'd been waiting years for this moment. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm he only had when he thought he had total control over me again. I stood across from him, arms crossed, waiting for him to explain what the hell he was doing. He opened the folder slowly, like a magician revealing a trick. "I've been keeping track," he said. "Every cost, every expense. Every sacrifice." Inside the folder were pages and pages of numbers, some typed, some handwritten, some ripped out of old notebooks. It looked chaotic, obsessive. He'd been doing this for years. Keeping receipts, scribbling notes, calculating imaginary debts. I picked up one page and stared at it. Lunch money, $40 driving lessons, $600 household utilities her share. $3, $200 life guidance, $25, 000 emotional support, $75, 000 investment in her future, $112, 000 I blinked. What the hell is this? He leaned back like he'd been waiting to deliver this speech. "A tally of everything I've put into you. You're an adult now. Adults pay what they owe." I felt something hot rise in my chest. "You didn't pay for my college. I gave you a home for 18 years, he shot back. "I gave you food, a bed, structure, my time. You think that's free?" My voice shook. "That's what parents are supposed to do." He slammed his palm on the table, making the folder jump. "Don't raise your voice at me. I'm not one of your little friends." The old fear tried to crawl back in, but I pushed it down. "I'm not paying you for raising me." He stood up, real slow, like he wanted to make sure I saw how angry he was. "You benefited from my work. You wouldn't be where you are without me. So yes, you're going to pay me. A percentage of every paycheck for the next 10 years. We'll start at 15%. I actually laughed. A short, broken laugh. "You're insane." His eyes went cold, flat, unblinking. "You think you can walk away from me after everything I've done? I already have." He took a step toward me and something in the air changed. Not physical intimidation, something worse. Confidence, certainty, like he had a card he hadn't shown yet. "You should read the rest of the folder," he said. Before you make this harder than it needs to be. I opened another document. My blood ran cold. It wasn't numbers. It was screenshots, emails, printouts of messages between me and my mom, personal ones, ones where I told her about his behavior, ones where I said I felt trapped, ones where I said I was scared of him. "How did you get these?" I whispered. He didn't answer, because that wasn't the point. The point was that he had them. The point was that he had been watching me long before I understood how deep this went. I felt dizzy. He'd always been weirdly good at knowing things, where I was, who I was talking to, what I was planning. I thought it was just him being controlling. I never imagined he was actually tracking me. "You've cost me a lot," he said calmly, "and if you keep pushing, you'll cost yourself more." I stepped back. My shoulder hit the fridge. Then he said the sentence that sucked every bit of air out of my lungs. "I didn't raise you out of love. I raised you for a return on investment." My throat closed. "Get out." He didn't move. So I walked to the front door, opened it wide, and stared at him until he finally picked up his folder. "This isn't over," he said. "You'll pay one way or another." He walked out. And I locked the door behind him, even though I already knew a lock wouldn't stop whatever he had planned next. I thought the folder was the worst of it. I thought the insane debt list and the stolen messages were just him being obsessive and invasive. Classic him, but heightened. I had no idea he was about to reveal something that would knock the ground out from under me completely. 2 days after I kicked him out, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text, not an email, a letter, certified. With his handwriting on the front, my stomach dropped. I almost threw it away. But curiosity won. I carried it inside, sat on my couch, and opened it. Inside was a printed notice, not from him, but from a law office in Georgetown I had never heard of. At the top, pre-filing notification. My name, his name, and something about a financial guardianship petition. Guardianship. My hands went cold. I read the paragraph twice, 3 times. My dad had contacted an attorney to begin the process of declaring me financially incapable of independent decision-making. He was attempting to get legal control over my income, my assets, my accounts, everything. Not because I was incapacitated, not because I had done anything wrong, but because he wanted access. He wanted a legal pathway to own me. I stopped breathing for a second. There was a number at the bottom. I called it with shaking hands. The receptionist confirmed it was real. Confirmed he had scheduled a consultation. Confirmed he told the attorney that I was reckless with money, emotionally unstable, and at risk of being taken advantage of. I felt sick. I hung up and immediately called my mom. She didn't answer. I called again. And again, when she finally picked up, she sounded exhausted. "Did he contact you too?" she asked before I said a word. My whole body tensed. "What did he do?" she hesitated. "Honey, he came to my place last night." My heart dropped. "Why?" "To tell me he was taking control back. He said you were slipping, that you were being ungrateful. He said he had proof you weren't capable of managing your life. And he showed me something." "What did he show you?" She took a shaky breath. "A bank statement." I froze. "Mom, what bank statement?" "Yours," she whispered. "Only the numbers were wrong, they were way off. It looked like you were overdrafted by thousands." My voice cracked. "I'm not overdrafted. I know." That's why I asked him where he got it, and he said, she stopped. He said he had access. I felt my throat close. Access. Access to my bank, my email, my messages. He hadn't just been watching me, he'd been inside my accounts. I suddenly remembered all the times things felt slightly off over the years. Password resets I didn't request, notifications I brushed off, weird login attempts that I assumed were random spam. All the times he somehow knew when my paychecks deposited or when I made big purchases. He hadn't been guessing. He'd been monitoring. The realization hit so hard my knees gave out. I slid to the floor. My mom kept talking, panicked now, but her voice felt far away. All I could hear was his statement from my kitchen. "Don't make me collect it the hard way." This wasn't just about money. This wasn't about pride. This wasn't about the graduation meltdown. This was a plan, one he had been building for years, one he believed he had the right to execute. And then my mom said something that made everything inside me go still. He said, and I swear these were his exact words, she was raised for this. The room spun. Raised for what? Before I could ask, I got a buzz on my phone, a text from my dad. Short, simple, check your email. I opened it. And the first thing I saw made my entire world collapse. The email subject line was, "Final notice before action." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tap it open. Inside was a PDF he'd attached, another spreadsheet, but this one had a title at the top. Projected Financial Recovery Plan for Daughter. But that wasn't the part that made my blood freeze. The first page wasn't numbers. It was a screenshot of my bank app's login screen with a timestamp in the corner, 2:14, that morning. And under it he'd typed, "Access restored, don't force my hand." He wasn't just bragging, he was warning me. He had hacked into my account, again, and he was comfortable enough to show me, almost proud. I sat there staring at the screen until my vision blurred. Fear, anger, humiliation, they all twisted into something acidic in my chest. He wanted me scared. He wanted me off balance. He wanted me too overwhelmed to fight back. But instead of freezing, something very quiet and very cold settled inside me. A decision. If he wanted a war, I'd give him one. But it would be my war, on my terms, not his. I called my mom back first. "Mom, listen," I said, pacing the living room. "I need you to stay out of this for a little while." "What? No, honey. I'm serious. If he thinks you're involved, he'll come after you too. Just trust me." "I'm handling it." She wanted to argue, but she heard something in my voice, maybe the same thing I was feeling. Something steely. Something done being scared. Next, I screenshotted everything, the fake bank statement, the hacked login screenshot, the guardianship notice, the debt list, the emails, the texts. I uploaded all of it to a secure cloud folder he didn't know existed. Then I did something I should have done years ago. I changed every password I had. And when that didn't feel safe enough, I drove to the Wells Fargo in Round Rock and changed my entire account number. The banker asked if something had happened, and I just said, "Someone keeps accessing my accounts without my permission." She frowned. "That's serious." I nodded. "Yeah, I know." After that, I drove to a police station, not to file anything yet, but to ask questions. To understand what counted as evidence, what counted as unauthorized access, what counted as harassment. I didn't give his name, not yet, but I needed the rules before I made my next move. And the whole time I was doing this, my phone kept lighting up with texts from him. "You're being dramatic. You're making this harder. You owe me. We can work this out if you stop acting like a child. Answer me." I didn't respond. Not once. I wasn't giving him control of the narrative. That night, when I finally got home, I spread everything out on my coffee table. The folder he left, the printed letter, the screenshots, the notes I took at the bank and police station. It looked like an evidence board in some Netflix crime documentary. And for the first time, seeing all of it together, I realized something that made my stomach twist. This wasn't a snap decision by an angry parent. This wasn't spontaneous. He had been preparing for this, building a case. Creating fake financial records, collecting personal data, tracking my movements, reading my messages. This wasn't chaos, it was strategy. He had been laying groundwork for years to make sure that when he finally tried to control my adult life, he'd have enough proof to make it look legitimate. He didn't want money, he wanted ownership. And that was when I knew the truth. If I didn't hit back and hit hard, he would never stop. So I started planning. And I planned in silence, because men like him don't fear yelling. They don't fear confrontation. They don't fear being told no. But they do fear consequences they can't wiggle out of. They fear losing control. They fear being exposed. And that was exactly what I intended to do. Piece by piece, I was going to dismantle the image he built, the lies he spread, the power he believed he had. But before I could make a move, something happened that changed everything. Something none of my planning could have predicted. Something that proved he wasn't just trying to control me. He was already 10 steps ahead. It happened 3 days into my planning, right when I was starting to feel like I had a grip on things. I'd spent hours organizing evidence, talking with a legal aid counselor off the record, tightening every part of my digital life. I was finally breathing again, not relaxed, never relaxed, but steady. Then I got a call from my HR manager. It was 8:17 a.m. I was sitting at my tiny kitchen table eating cereal, rereading my notes when my phone buzzed. "Hey," she said, her voice stiff. "Can you come in a little early today? There's something we need to discuss." My stomach nodded instantly. "What kind of something?" She hesitated. "It's probably better to talk in person." That phrase, in person, is never good. I drove to work, heart pounding the whole way. The moment I walked in, I saw her standing outside her office like she'd been waiting for me. She shut the door behind us and took a breath. "Your father contacted us." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean he contacted you?" She rotated her computer monitor toward me. On the screen was an email, long, formal, and full of lies. He'd written a detailed complaint claiming I was emotionally unstable, financially reckless, and in need of external supervision. He said I was being influenced by dangerous outside parties. I'm assuming he meant my mom. And then he dropped the bomb. He had emailed them false documents, fake bank records, fake screenshots, fake proof that I was mismanaging money so severely that I was a risk to the company's financial interests. And the worst part, he signed it, concerned parent and financial guardian. I felt like the air had been punched out of me. "He's not my guardian, he's not anything. None of that is true, he made all that up." She nodded quickly. "I figured something was off. But we had to call you in because this is serious." He presented it like a legal matter. I buried my face in my hands. He wasn't just attacking my accounts. He was going after my job, my reputation, my stability. He wanted me cornered. He wanted me alone. He wanted me dependent. And then HR showed me the second email. It was worse. He had written a letter, an actual letter he mailed to our corporate office, claiming he needed access to my work schedule, my supervisors, and my location because I was at risk of harming myself without proper oversight. I felt my stomach drop. He's lying about everything." HR believed me, I could tell, but they were also nervous. If someone claims a mental health crisis, the company has to respond cautiously. Legally, morally, everything. She handed me a tissue. "Look, this is above my pay grade. But what I can say is that if this continues, we may need to get our legal team involved. Have you considered filing something?" My throat tightened. I had. I'd been preparing to. But I didn't want it to escalate like this. But then she said something that made my blood go cold. "He also called us." I looked at her sharply. "What?" "He called the front desk asking what time your shift started. He said he needed to check in." He sounded assertive. Assertive. Her polite way of saying aggressive. He was trying to insert himself into my workplace, into my daily movements. This wasn't manipulation anymore. This wasn't guilt-tripping. This wasn't pressure. This was stalking. My hands shook as I left the office. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe. My dad had always been controlling, but this was something else entirely. This was obsession. He didn't just want influence over my life. He wanted full access. Every part of me, every decision, every dollar, every movement. And then, as if the day hadn't already collapsed underneath me, my phone buzzed with a new text. Not from him, from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "He's been planning this since you were 15. You need to see what I have." My entire body went cold. I stared at the message, unable to move. Who the hell was that? What did they know? And how long had my dad's plan been in motion? The text came from a number with a 512 area code, local. My heart hammered as I stared at it. "He's been planning this since you were 15. You need to see what I have." I hesitated only a second before responding. "Who is this?" A reply came almost instantly. "Meet me at the HEB on Palmer. 20 minutes, back parking lot." I should have ignored it, I knew that. But something in my gut, some instinct I couldn't explain, told me this person was connected to whatever dark, hidden piece of my dad I still hadn't seen. So I went. The back parking lot was half empty. A woman in her late 40s stood beside an old blue Honda, arms folded, looking like she'd been waiting years for this moment. When she saw me, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. "You look just like your mom," she said quietly. "Who are you?" I asked. She introduced herself, a former coworker of my dad's from when he worked at a manufacturing plant in Leander years ago. She glanced around nervously before opening a worn manila envelope. Inside were printed emails, handwritten notes, and what looked like pieces of an old HR file. "I kept these," she said, "because I knew one day you might need them. I didn't know when, but I knew it would come." My stomach twisted. "Need them for what?" She took a breath. "For the truth, for what he planned to do to you." I swallowed hard. "Why would he plan anything?" She didn't blink. "Because you weren't just his daughter to him, you were his retirement plan." My whole body went cold. She explained everything, slowly, painfully, like she'd rehearsed it. My dad had always seen himself as a genius, a man cheated by life, a man who believed every hour he spent raising me was money he deserved back. When I was 15, the plant offered financial planning seminars. Instead of learning how to save, he fixated on the concept of dependence as long-term investment assets. And something in him snapped. He started telling coworkers that raising a child was no different than buying stock. You front the cost, then reap the return. He bragged about molding me into someone who would always owe him. What she showed me next made my stomach flip. A printed email he'd sent to another coworker 10 years ago. "When she graduates and starts earning, I'll finally get paid back. Kids are investments. You create them, you shape them, you collect, it's only fair." He wasn't joking. He wasn't exaggerating, he believed it. He believed I was made for this. Then she handed me one last paper, one she said she almost didn't keep. It was a handwritten note. His handwriting, dated 3 years ago. "Make sure she never fully separates, track accounts. Keep leverage, she was raised to return value." I felt sick. My knees actually buckled. The woman steadied me. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but you need to understand he didn't lose control recently. He's been building toward this. For years, every interaction, every guilt trip, every sacrifice. This was always the end game. And in that moment, I understood something horrifying. My dad didn't love me, not in any real human way. He shaped me, like a project. Like property, like a machine he believed he owned because he assembled it. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was an investment, an asset, an eventual payout. That was the reason. The chilling, awful, soul-breaking truth behind everything he'd ever done. And now that I knew it, I wasn't scared anymore. I was done. And he was about to learn what happens when the asset fights back. I drove home shaking, not from fear now, but from a cold, focused rage I had never felt before. A rage that felt clean, steady, controlled. If he wanted a return on investment, I'd give him one. Just not the one he expected. I spent the next 48 hours executing a plan with the same precision he'd spent years using against me. First, I filed a police report, not emotional, not dramatic, just factual. Unauthorized access to financial accounts, stalking behavior, attempted fraud. I provided timestamps, screenshots, the fake statements, the emails he sent to my job, the guardianship attempt. The officer's face tightened as he read. Then I filed a report with the Texas Attorney General's Office for Identity Theft and Financial Coercion. Next, I met with a legal aid attorney. The moment she saw the evidence, her eyebrows shot up. "You have enough to file a protective order," she said, "and depending on what the forensic techs find, possibly criminal charges." Good. I wanted a paper trail he couldn't talk his way out of. Then came the part that mattered most. I informed my HR department and forwarded everything. The legal team took one look and said, "You did the right thing. We'll handle any future contact from him." He would never get near my job again. But the final blow, the one that shattered his image forever, was when I sent the evidence to every adult in my family who had ever apologized for his behavior on his behalf. No commentary, no rant, just a message. "This is what he really is." Within an hour, I started getting calls, horrified voices, shocked sighs, and after aunts saying, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Even his own brother messaged, "He needs help." "I'm so sorry you went through this." By the end of the night, his mask was gone, but the final confrontation came sooner than I expected. 3 days later, he showed up at my apartment, banging on the door, demanding I stop ruining his reputation, screaming that I owed him silence. But this time, I didn't answer. The police did. They served him with the emergency protective order right there in the hallway. He tried to argue, tried to twist the story, tried to say I was misguided and brainwashed. But the officers weren't listening. They'd seen the evidence. When they escorted him out of the building, he shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over. You can't shut me out." But he was wrong. It was over, because I had already changed my locks. I had already secured my accounts. I had already taken away every avenue he had to reach into my life. And for the first time since childhood, I felt something I didn't recognize at first. Peace. 2 weeks later, I sat in my apartment, drinking iced coffee, the evening breeze drifting through the window, my phone blissfully silent. I thought about everything he took from me, my security, my childhood, my trust. But he didn't get the one thing he wanted more than anything, ownership of my future. He tried to turn me into a lifelong debt. Instead, I turned him into a closed chapter. When people ask me how I finally broke free, I just say, he underestimated the ROI of raising a daughter who learned how to fight back. And honestly, that's his problem now.